Why not be a $1 billion company? There are certain things that I think New Era is an awesome company, and I think it's a company that Buffalo can be proud of. And I think it starts right there. Like I want Oxford Pennant to be a brand that people from Buffalo can point and say, you know what is made in Buffalo at Oxford Pennant? They're headquartered in Buffalo.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whenever you may be listening, and welcome to Latitude, the 43 North podcast. I'm your host, Nate Benson, Director of Media and Public Relations here at 43 North, and we've got a fantastic episode today. I'm joined by... Who are you?
Dave Horesh with Oxford Pennant.
Dave, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night because I have a newborn at home, but this is my third cup of coffee and it's not even lunchtime.
Already throwing the newborn under the bus. Not the small business you're running, it's the kids.
It's the best small business excuse.
It is.
You forget something, I've got a kid.
Yeah, I can't get out of something. I got kids. I gotta get home to the wife.
I'm going to use it until he's 18.
So Dave, for those who don't know, what is Oxford Pennant?
So Oxford Pennant is a designer and manufacturer of wool felt pennants, flags, and banners, and we are located at 731 Main Street in Buffalo, New York.
Who would possibly want a wool felt pennant?
Well, I did. That's how the company got started.
That's old school. I mean, that's me at 5 years old going to the ballpark with my dad.
Yeah, the wool felt component of all of it is really what makes the business special. The pennant itself, like you can buy pennants anywhere, but a lot of the pennants that are manufactured now that are sold at a wide scale commercial level are usually manufactured overseas. They're usually made out of synthetic materials, and we started the company to create. We always say novel and nostalgic, right? We want something that feels new, but also feels very old and familiar at the same time. So our product is based on the pennants that were manufactured in the early 20th century, which are made out of a wool and cotton blend of felt.
Now, Buffalo has a history, right, at one time they were a large manufacturer of wool pennants, correct? Or am I wrong?
There was a company that used to be in Buffalo called Trench Manufacturing, which among many other things made felt pennants. Mm-hmm. They also they were notorious for you ever see those skinny top Gold's Gym tank tops?
Oh yeah.
Back in the 90s, Arnold Schwarzenegger wearing them or whatever. They used to make those here. Huh. Actually, their facility is where St. Vincent de Paul is on Main Street. That's where it was. And among many other things, they made wool felt pennants. But I think things like T-shirts and sweatshirts just got more lucrative. Yeah. But I think that was 70s and 80s. It predates me.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how did Oxford Pennant get started?
Oxford was started by myself and my business partner, Brett Michael. I'm a partner at Block Club, which is a branding and strategy agency. And when I was, long before I was a partner, I was just a groundling, and I was moving into a promotion at Block Club, actually at City Dining Cards, which then became Loop. And as I was moving into the promotion, Brett was a temp, and I needed to train him. So he and I were instant friends, and we drove out to Boston together. And while we were in Boston, there's this great area in Boston South End that has a lot of vintage denim jackets and patches. Actually, it's a store called Bobby from Boston, and we I don't even know if it's still around, but we ended up going into the store and we came across wool felt pennants. And one of the things that Brett and I bonded over was that I have a history working in screen printing and offset printing and manufacturing, and Brett is a band guy, so Brett always made band T-shirts and posters. And so we talked a lot about making stuff, right? Stickers and T-shirts and hats and pins and whatever that might be. And I held up a pennant and I was like, where would you get one of these made? And he's like, I don't think they make them that way anymore. So I looked into it, and I couldn't really find a company that was doing it the way that they were made back in the day. So we bought some felt, we cut it up, screen printed on it, and threw them on Instagram. That was the end of the story. And I didn't really think we were going to have a company. I just thought we were doing something for ourselves because it was a unique product. And because of the vast power of the internet, people from across the country and around the world started taking note. And, somebody would buy something, they'd post about it on Instagram. They would say, I bought this from Oxford Pennant. Their followers would come to us and say, I saw this thing that you made for this guy. Can you make one for me? And so it goes. And today, that's still the business model.
What's in the name? Why Oxford Pennant?
Oh, you want to make me answer this? It's not a good story.
All right, we're going to have to make up a good story.
So
change the story every time you're asked it. That's the key.
Right now, I've not gotten enough sleep to change that story. The story is that I was originally going to call the company, I'm not even going to tell you what I was going to call it because it was a terrible name. And I'm Jewish, so I was registering the company name on Christmas Day 2013 with my wife. And I was making the website address. I bought a domain name with the old domain, and she's like, "That name is awful. You've got to come up with a new name." So I've got all these names that I'm coming up with, and she just lost her patience with me. And she goes to walk out of the room, and she's like, "Just name it after the dog." And I'm like, "Name it after the dog." And our dog's name is Oxford, and we were like obsessed with our dog, right?
Right.
So I texted Brett. I'm like, "What about Oxford Pennant?" And he's like, "It's old, it's cool, I like it." And now that's like the dog's still around. He's 8.5 years old, and the company's 5 years old. But everyone always thinks that I named my dog after my company, which is why I'm sort of embarrassed of it. So I don't try to tell that story too frequently.
That's a great story.
It's a Latitude exclusive.
Yeah, there you go. No, that's a fantastic story because everyone. That's always the hardest part of the business is trying to figure out what to call it.
Yeah, and like the cool thing about it is that it is kind of an old sounding name.
Yeah.
So what's interesting,
it was established in the early 1900s.
Well, that's what a lot of people think. I was in New York a couple weeks ago, kicking off a new project, and I ended up just networking and doing some stuff while I was in town. I visited with one of our accounts, and one of our accounts is like, "Yeah, I heard that like you like inherited the company from your parents or something like that."
Sure.
And I'm like, first of all, like I didn't want the reputation that I just like got the company.
Yeah.
But it was interesting that people had thought that it had gone back that far, and that there was something that could be inherited.
It almost, quick marketing. I mean, it would almost be funny if like just every like week or two, you guys just change like the history on the website or something like that, just like to something,
Don't give us any ideas. I can feel
you guys are already creative enough.
My
with your
partner
Instagram,
Patrick Finan is listening to this right now,
Yeah.
and he's going, "Don't do it." I know.
That's a terrible idea, Nate. Don't do it. So you guys got kicked off in 2013. Kind of not knowing that it was going to be a business. Like you said, it was kind of like, well, let's see if we can do this. Oh, we can. So what was like that first 6 months like? What did you really think you were, was it still a side project, or were you like, oh no, this is a legit business. We're going to go full throttle here.
You know what? That's a question that doesn't get asked very much.
It's because you come to Latitude for the good, tough questions.
That's
why people come here.
Why is the company named after your dog, and what was the first few months like? I think I said this. I was interviewed a few weeks back, and I said the same thing. But I started the company while my now wife was my girlfriend, and she was in grad school. So I kind of knew that I like had to get it off the ground before she came home, because I knew that I wasn't going to want to start a company from scratch once she was back in Buffalo. So the first 6 months of the company is a good question, because that was a period in which we were getting everything manufactured, and then I was taking it home, right? So my terrible apartment, which was small as it was, started to fill up with Pennants. And as we started selling product, I would take evenings and Saturdays to pack everything up, put it into tubes, and ship it. So I would handwrite notes. I would roll them up myself. I would throw the tubes in a backpack, and I would walk up to the post office, and then post office would close at 12:30. So I'd walk in at 12. I'd dump it all on the table. I'd walk away from the post office, and that would be it. And then
meanwhile, the postal workers are cussing you out.
They're never. I mean, I love you, U.S. Post Office, but they're never happy.
That's true.
They're never happy to see you, even when you have just one letter.
Even with your bubbly personality.
Even my good looks and bubbly personality. And then the order started to get too big for my backpack, and we started to outgrow my apartment. So pretty quickly, we moved into a space on Breckenridge. We actually had the spot behind Row, where now there's a jeweler called Issa Mars that's there, but it's this tiny little room, and it was just this auxiliary space that Row was using as storage. And I called her up, and I'm like, this thing that I have going on is starting to get too big for my apartment. Can I use that space that you're using for storage? And she let us do it. So the first 6 months it was a lot of I would post on Instagram, I would comment, I would follow other people, I would try to attract the attention of big companies. And I would pack it all up, myself. Brett would come over, we'd get coffee, we'd order pizza, and we would just run the business on nights and weekends.
You've dropped the name a few times. Why was Instagram so, I guess, influential in the early success of Oxford? What was it about Instagram versus a Facebook, a Twitter, or MySpace, Friendster, whatever?
It's a visual medium. I think one of the things that we've gravitated toward naturally with the product has been graphic designers, illustrators. It's the interesting thing about the product is that it's a medium. So the medium becomes, I wouldn't say competitive, but there is a culture of who makes the coolest pennant, who designs the most interesting thing. So it's something that lends itself really well to a visual medium like Instagram, more so than Twitter, because sometimes you don't really have that much to say about it. You just want to share that it's a cool thing you made. And so I personally, if you ever go to the Instagram page, and like we have like no Twitter presence, we have a limited Facebook presence. And sometimes the Instagram page, like I don't like to wax poetic about the product or the company. Sometimes I'm like, look at this amazing pennant that someone else made or someone else designed and that we made, right? And because it works well on that visual medium, it's something that like, you make it, you take a photograph of it. If it's photographed and staged properly, you throw it online and like it can go nuts. So sometimes it's better to just shut up and let the product do the talking.
So in that, first 6 months, first year, you talked about how you quickly outgrew your apartment. Were there some things that just didn't go right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what didn't go right? It's funny. I don't think that there's I don't think that there's like a particular moment that I can point to where things ever went wrong. I remember.
So there's never a day like where you're like flip the table, like I'm done, forget it. Like,
I had one. The company brought me to tears once. One time it brought me to tears. It still like frustrates me to the point where I think I'm gonna cry. But there's only like one time where I remember standing next to the co-op and I had. It was the biggest order that we had ever sold. It was 500 pieces at the time, and it was a big customer. It was a big opportunity, and I didn't want to mess it up, and I didn't have the money to mess it up, and we messed it up. The client had sent us these like amazing customized tags. I needed help from a manufacturer that had sewers on staff because we couldn't do it all ourselves, and they forgot to put the tags in, and the order was due. And they just totally forgot. It was the reason that I hired this contract manufacturer. They forgot to put the tags in, and the client needed them like the next day, so I needed to pay to overnight them anyway, and there was just no time to put them in. And I was mortified to call this huge company and to call them up and say, this one thing that was supposed to make this product yours and special and like really unique that we've never done before that I promised you we could do, we didn't do. We couldn't do it. And if you can either wait and get it or you can have us overnight them without it. And, I think that like, as with anything, I think the worrying was actually the hardest part because like we called the client and they were like, dude, that's a bummer. Send them anyway. And that was it. I just took a discount off the invoice. But I was so nervous about our reputation. I was so nervous about messing something up. And I was so upset with the fact that I had put so much confidence in a vendor that couldn't come through for us. So, yeah, I don't like, but that was never a cataclysmic moment because I think that like problems come up in business all the time. You're always going to be presented with challenges, but like it's a cliche to say it, but it's all in how you respond to it. So some of the best clients that we've had are people who like had a first order that we made right on after we messed it up. So when I think about things that have happened at the company, I never like get too upset with problems because I immediately pivot to like, well, how do we present the problem and the solution at the same time? And I think if you can do that in business, I think people are willing to give you the benefit of the doubt because you're not just saying, I don't know what went wrong. What do you want me to do? Right? You're saying, if this went wrong, I take full responsibility. I can either like give you money or give you product or I can fix it or like whatever. And I think that people really appreciate that level of partnership when you make a mistake because we're a small company. There's a lot going on at any given time. And we can't expect to build a company that doesn't have mistakes. We manufacture stuff. We manufacture thousands of products each week. We expect that like something's going to go wrong, and we just build it into our SOPs and processes to fix it and to do it right.
It's pretty naive to think that everything's going to be flawless and perfect, and you're never going to run into a problem. Along whether it's design, manufacturing, shipping, or when the client opens the box, butterflies come out or something. You just never know, right?
Yeah, I mean it's I would suggest to any small business owner. I think that like the interesting thing is that like we had this phrase that we used to use at the company back in the day where we used to say go ready set. And it was like just do it, right? And then try to figure out like go back and figure out what was wrong, and then like you'll have a better process moving forward. When you do that sort of thing, when you move quickly, you bust open tons of doors because you're saying yes to everybody. Sometimes you disappoint people, but sometimes something amazing and innovative breaks out of that. So like when you have projects to experiment on and you're doing it for somebody, it forces you to innovate and it forces you to get more efficient so that you can make your margin. And I think that that's actually helped us a lot as a company. Just like being optimists and saying like, it's going to work out. Why wouldn't it work out? And then like, if it doesn't work out, you go, didn't work out. Let's go fix it. And let's do it better next time.
So how would you kind of define the design aspect of what you guys sell? I mean, you guys have had some tremendous clients, and I'll let you kind of run through the list of some of who you've done work with. But even like kind of your inventory of like home designs are very unique, very adventurous, exploratory. Like there's an overall encompassing theme. How do you guys go into the design aesthetic of trying to figure out what's going to be appealing to folk and what's going to sell?
there is no math to it, right? There's no calculus behind coming up with a pennant that says a certain thing. In some instances, I think that like themes of, like our catchphrase for the company is celebrate everything. And like that becomes our filter. So when we say celebrate everything, celebrate home, celebrate family, celebrate your city, celebrate your marriage, celebrate your dog, celebrate exploration, celebrate adventure. Those are good. That's a really great platform to create any sort of pennant. Now, the fact that we do customs also means that people will do whatever they want to do. But like in many instances, it's like if it fits that celebrate everything ideology, then we'll usually explore that idea and like try to apply a cool design or illustration or type treatment to it. But in some instances, if a pennant makes us laugh, we make it. We have one of our best-selling pennants is a pennant that says "This place sucks." It's one of our best-selling pennants because, like, you know, our motto is celebrate everything, and in many instances, you'd put a pennant on your wall to celebrate home. But like sometimes you're at a place and like a place just sucks, or it's an inside joke with a friend, and it's one of those things that someone said at a meeting one time, and then a few days later we were still laughing about it, and we said, well, let's make it and throw it up on Instagram. So we made one. It went nuts. We put it on our website, and like it started selling.
You know, kind of back to the whole Instagram, it's probably a great place to kind of beta test the design. You make it look like you've manufactured something just to maybe generate, that interest or that the interest in the product.
The benefit to having flat manufacturing and to like controlling the manufacturing process and controlling the creative process is that you have that like speed to market is almost instantaneous. So from the consumer's perspective, if they see something on Instagram and they order it, if they don't think that we're Amazon, they don't expect to get it the next day, we can turn around products so quickly that if something goes nuts online, we can manufacture 50, 100, 300 if it sells really well. And if it doesn't, we can just say, it was just a joke.
April Fools, it's July, Dave.
Yeah, right. But it does. It allows us to like experiment with stuff and ask people like, would you buy this? Do you want it? And I'll give you a great example of when that happened. We have a pennant that the Toto song Africa.
Yeah.
Bless the rain. Yeah. So we made
mildly popular, I hear.
It's a little. Some people have heard it. Yeah. So I thought it would be really funny to make a pennant that celebrated Africa as a continent, but to have like I bless the rains down in Africa as the pennant saying. Sure. So we made one and we just like whipped up a quick design and we threw it on Instagram stories and we wrote like, you can go back and see this. We're never making this. And it was just a funny thing that Brett made to make me laugh. Yeah. And then people started sending us messages and they said, well, why not?
You need to make that.
Why don't you make it? So we like begrudgingly made it because we thought it was
called copyright infringement. No.
Yeah, no, that too, right? But the fact that people were reaching out and saying like, if you made this, I would buy it. We just did a pre-sale and we sold them, and now it's listed on our site. It's like this thing that like, we have these pennants that say like home, and they have like a teepee on it, and it's something you would gift to your family member. And like this one says, I bless the rains down in Africa, and it has a giraffe on it, and it makes people laugh and it makes them happy. So like, who am I to stand in the way of that?
One of the kind of signatures of Oxford Pennant is the city or state or kind of monument pennants. It's your Buffaloes, your Adirondacks, your Portlands, your Chicagos, things like that. Why? There's got to be like that nostalgia feeling, kind of like what you said, like, when you were growing up having those pennants and stuff. Obviously, folks across the country love representing, just like Buffalo does, love representing, their city. So, that kind of was when you're brainstorming ideas for that constant product to always have. It probably was a no-brainer for you guys to like have those staple cities, those staple mountains or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah, we're very fortunate at Oxford in that one of our partners is an incredible designer and illustrator, and Brad. He is very, very talented. And am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story then. So there's this designer. So the great thing, I'll kind of set up this story. The way that old pennants were manufactured, it wasn't like high design and it wasn't perfect, right?
Because it was monochromatic and it was like very blocky and.
Yeah, like if you needed a cowboy head, somebody would like draw a cowboy and be like, "There's your cowboy." Like I don't know what to tell you. I made what I made. Actually, this is kind of cool. So the old pennant manufacturers, you'll kind of wonder, like you'll see like Native American chiefs' heads on a lot of pennants, whether it says San Diego, California, or Rochester, New York. It's the same one, right? And the reason for that is that these companies used to send salespeople into the field before they had like the technology that they have right now. So they would go to like the Dubuque General Store, and they would walk in and they would say, well, we want to make Dubuque pennants, and here are the 5 options. If you want a custom illustration, you can do this, but the head would sell pretty well for you anyway. So they'll say, well, I'll take the head, right? They go back, they make the head, they ship it out, and then that becomes the pennant that they have. So because it was such a simplistic process, like place your order and you'll have your pennants in 6 months, because we're looking back at something that was manufactured back in the day, we want to have it be true to that style. So sometimes the simplicity of that and like the design restrictions of all of that are actually quite liberating, because we can't make something that's too over designed. Yeah. So Brett was just out in the Pacific Northwest earlier this summer. We did a pop-up shop with a store called Freeman in Seattle, and they make like awesome handmade like raincoats in the United States, actually make them themselves. And Aaron Draplin ended up, it was this, like, if you're a design person, you know who Aaron Draplin is, because he's done like all this incredible design work. And he's this big dude. He's got this big gregarious personality. And Brett was out there, and Draplin comes up to him and he says, you know what I love about your company? You're perfectly shitty. Which is a way better tagline than celebrate everything, by the way. But that's a compliment, because it's a product that's self-aware enough to know when the design stops and when it's time to just ship it. And I think that's having that understanding of when it looks like it was made back in the day and knowing when to stop is critically important to it.
Was that and there's no exact science, but like when did you guys hone in on that aspect of it? Was it when when they said it was perfectly shitty, or
when did we realize that that's what we were doing?
Yeah, like when, like, because I'm not a designer, but I'm a content guy. From a video editing standpoint or a podcasting standpoint, I can edit something to death. And I hate it. Like I hate working on a certain 30 seconds of something for hours on end, trying to make it perfect, and I eventually just step away and say, it's fine. I'm sure. So like any designer, any content creator can spend dozens of hours on a very meticulous thing and overdo it. So how did you get hyper aware of not to overdo it? Is it literally just like looking back, like always having that mentality of looking back to the way things used to be and just pumping the brakes?
I think you bring up it's a good question. Steve Jobs, who, like, for better or for worse, right? Whatever you want to say about Steve Jobs, he had this great saying that we talk about all the time. And I think he said it was designers or whatever it was. He was engineers, designers. He says designers ship. What he means by that is, like, at a certain point, you close the damn book and you put it in the box and you ship it away because you can't touch it anymore. I think that one of the greatest things that we have at the company is that as a designer, Brett is very aware of like the many options that a design could take, right? And that there is not one perfect design, but there are many ways to iterate it. There are many relationships that somebody could have with an individual product. So for us, like, we typically will present, like, if somebody wants a custom and we design it, here's like 2 options. You wanted the cowboy, here's a cowboy on a horse, here's a cowboy head. And like one of those options is probably going to be okay. So knowing that, like, the most perfect pennant design might exist 5 iterations in, but that the client would probably be happy with it 2 iterations in, is actually a key to part of the profitability of the company, is like knowing when, like, it's good enough and when it's time to just close the book and ship it. We've always done that. It's always been part of like who he is as a designer, and knowing that, like, there are multiple ways for a client to be happy. There's not one way.
Speaking of perfect designs, I just got an email from Brett. Look how great this Buffalo Startup Weekend pennant's going to be.
Look at that. We got a bison. Wow. You know what that makes me think? It makes me think we should go to Startup Weekend. When is Startup Weekend, Nate?
That's a great question. So Startup Weekend is September 14th through 16th, and you can now head over to Eventbrite, search Buffalo Startup Weekend, and use the promo code Nate to save 40% on your ticket for Startup Weekend. So you want to register. Seats will be limited, so you want to get in now. And I'm gonna the organizing committee is gonna be super annoyed with me, but we're giving away Oxford Pennants that say Buffalo Startup Weekend,
and they look super cool.
They're really awesome.
Well, how far into
this design's fantastic? I mean, it's basic, it's simple, it's fantastic. I love it.
But that's exactly what I mean, right? It's great. Like I can't tell you what's on the design, right? Because you have to go to Startup Weekend to get it. But it is what it is.
Tells you exactly what's happening.
It is what it is. It looks fantastic. It's going to look cool on somebody's wall, right? And that's the story.
I think me being the avid woodworker I am, I think I'm going to make a little frame for that when I take mine home, and it'll be nice.
That sounds pretty good.
So shifting gears a little bit, you guys were one of the $100,000 winners for the Ignite Buffalo program. It was a 43 North, Facebook, Amazon, M&T, and apologies to all the sponsors. I can't list them all.
WooCommerce.
Yeah, everybody. WooCommerce. Well, I can name them. WooCommerce, Automatic WordPress, QuickBooks, M&T Bank, Amazon, Facebook, and 43 North.
And thank you, ECC.
And SUNY
Erie. Sorry.
Yeah,
yes.
Come on, branding. What was it about Ignite that piqued your guys' interest, and what's been the impact of winning one of the $100,000 grants for that?
Which of those questions do you want me to answer
You
first?
can add user's choice.
What piqued our interest in it? Well, I think that the $100,000 prize definitely caught our attention first, right? That's the intention of all of it. I think what's happening, like we as a company, we've hockey sticked in the sense that like we were for the last 4 years, we were that company. We were an iteration of the company that was being run out of my living room, even though we continued to grow. And it was a company that was sort of grown based on instinct, right? And one of the things that I'm most interested in as a business owner, as one of the business owners at Oxford, but really as the principal at the company, is like I don't want to just own a company that people think is cool. I want to own a company that's smart. And like, don't get me wrong, the $100,000 is like, it's the reason that we went through the process of like recording the video, doing the whole, like that was, the application process was restrictive in the sense that like you couldn't just submit your name and email address and hope that you were like, right. Yeah. So it took some effort and it took our team to decide to do it. But to me, like I wanted to go into this program because knowing that we would get access to M&T and to Facebook and to like all the mentorship component of all of it, put me in a position where like in some instances I can retroactively go back and figure out what we're doing wrong or like get new ideas. Like the other night there was this seminar on M&T banking, and one of the speakers, Josh Abrakta, gave me like these awesome ideas about using ACH payments, and I was like, oh, we could do ACH, right? We could save the credit card, right? So like I wanted to make sure that I was setting aside time as the company is starting to catapult up to go back, like fix our processes, hear people's perspectives, and learn. Because like if we're going to be a great company, it's not going to be because we come up with the next "This Place Sucks" pennant, which I hope we do. But I hope it's because we are a smart company that figures out how to like increase our margin, how to manufacture more efficiently, how to hire people and keep them. And in instances where like we need to like make hard decisions, that we can make them in an educated way. Mm-hmm. So the money was great, but if we wanted the money, we could have just gone out and sought out like VC investment. Sure. It was the fact that like we could actually take time to work on the business and not in the business by virtue of this program that sealed the deal for us.
You know, you said something bold in kind of all the way through that resonated with me. You know, you guys said, you know, we want to be the New Era Cap of pennants. You know, that's a bold, you know, New Era Cap is a $1 billion company, you know, MLB, NBA, NFL, like they are when you think hats, you think New Era Cap. Mm-hmm. You know, why make that comparison, and why make that goal?
Why not be a $1 billion company? There are certain things that I think New Era is an awesome company, and I think it's a company that Buffalo can be proud of. And I think it starts right there. Like I want Oxford Pennant to be a brand that people from Buffalo can point and say, you know what is made in Buffalo? At Oxford Pennant. They're headquartered in Buffalo. And I want people to know our story, and for our story to be representative of the zeitgeist of Buffalo as it exists in like 2018 and beyond. And I'd like that to be part of the story like in 2040 and in 2050. I think that if you don't set goals like that, you need your beacon. You need something to work toward. And it is, sometimes this company is hard. I was up this morning, like I told you, I was up because of my kid, but like once my kid was up, it was 5 and I'm like, I can get some emailing in if I wake up anyway, and cranked down my first cup of coffee and got started. And it's not easy to wake up every day and just commit yourself to like doing that. But when you have that guiding light, like that, it's really important to know like what you're trying to achieve, because every day when you swing the hammer, you build a little bit more in that direction. But New Era represents what I think Oxford could be, because like I think there's a lot of parity between the two companies. The hat is a platform. Oxford is a platform. The hat is marketed in 100 different ways. So is Oxford. The licensing component of it is really where I see us growing dramatically. As a company, we are so poised to break into the licensing space. Right now, we actually already secured collegiate licenses within Western New York. Once we work out what the secret sauce is there, why would we stop, right? Why couldn't we go out and get the Alabama license, the LSU license, the Syracuse license, the Harvard license, and like put our spin on those products, which I don't think is really being done right now. So, and I think New Era has done that, right? Like New Era took like, oh, it's just a ball cap, and they made it like a New Era cap. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to be able to say, well, I took a pennant and I turned it into an Oxford pennant. Like we captured the spirit of a place rather than just being the next company to screen print LSU on a purple and gold pennant. So the other component to all of that, not to go too long-winded on this point, is that by being in a city like Buffalo and the culture that exists in the business community here, we can access people who are at New Era. You know, they don't act as this monolithic company that doesn't open up their doors. There are people that work at that company who can share ideas and techniques and really like, if they wanted to, open doors for us. So like the fact that we could pick up the phone and like ask for a meeting and probably get it because it's Buffalo and people
it's right down the street.
It's right down the street,
There's 2
right?
degrees of separation.
Exactly.
Buffalo, yeah.
Like they can serve as mentors to us as well if they chose to do it. So like I think that there are lots of components to all of that that make it a great company to follow in the footsteps of.
And as we wrap up, I think it's important. You know, it's not just Pennants. You guys doing like the championship banners now, the flags. I mean, so you guys are branching off into very specific products that obviously have endless possibilities too, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a retail store opening up. So the retail store will also, you'll be able to finally buy an Oxford Pennant t-shirt, which we've for years said we were never going to make t-shirts. And now here we are, t-shirt company, another one.
A wool felt t-shirt.
No, they're like cotton t-shirts like any other t-shirt, but they say funny things on it. No, yeah.
That's right. One wool t-shirt.
It's like a really uncomfortable t-shirt
like
that you get to. It's like $150.
Yeah. When's that going to open?
Well, it'll be open in September. So by the time this goes live, it'll be September. Roll past our shop on Main Street, and if the neon sign is on, we are open.
That's fantastic. If people want to learn more about Oxford Pennant or visit the shop, how can they do so?
So Instagram at Oxford Pennant, Twitter at Oxford Pennant, but we don't update it. Facebook at Oxford Pennant. Shops at 731 Main Street. Website's oxfordpennant.com. Phone number is 716-500-6669. We'd love to talk to you. And please stop in anytime that you're nearby. We love to talk shop.
And you guys do custom orders of any shape and size?
I will. Yeah, I mean, we will take on any project of any size. If you want one pennant made for a wedding or for like a friend that had a baby, we will do that. If you need 5,000 pennants manufactured for an event, we'll do that. And if your startup weekend, for example, we'll even do that.
Fantastic. Which, head on over to Eventbrite, search Buffalo Startup Weekend, and you reserve your spot using the promo code Nate to save 40%, and you might be able to get yourself an Oxford Pennant that says, well, you'll have to register to find out. Thank you so much, Dave, for joining us on the podcast. Remember to head on over to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. You and your team are going to go do that today, right? All your team members.
I'm doing it from my phone right now.
Fantastic. Leave a 5-star review of this podcast so that more people learn about the great things happening in the Buffalo startup and entrepreneurship scene. For 43 North, I'm Nate Benson, and we'll see you with the next one.